We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, "I feel a bit lightheaded, maybe you should drive." And suddenly, there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping, screeching, and diving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas. And a voice was screaming, "Holy Jesus, what are these goddamned animals?" Then it was quiet again. My attorney had taken his shirt off and was pouring beer onto his chest to facilitate the tanning process. "What the hell are you yelling about?" he muttered, staring up at the sun with his eyes closed and covered with wraparound Spanish sunglasses. Never mind," I said. "It's your turn to drive." I hit the brakes and aimed the great red shark toward the shoulder of the highway. No point in mentioning those bats, I thought. The poor bastard will see them soon enough.
I'd like to ask you why you use drugs.
Different drugs for different things. Right now, I think it's in my interest, in ours perhaps, maybe the interest of the greater good for me to smoke a joint and calm down. It's been demonstrably proven that temper tantrums are not the best way to do interviews, and probably my life will be easier and yours too if I smoke a joint. Now, if I were to sit here in a fit of anger and you saw me eating acid, if I were you, I'd leave with all the equipment. That cranks it up even worse.
The important thing in Hunter's life actually is seeing that great country, that amazing sort of rolling place, go down the drain. The drugs play a part in it. It's only another way of twisting the mental image, if you like. I don't know. Maybe he actually needed something maybe to speed himself up to keep it going. In a way, it's a kind of a dedication, just in order to see what he wants to see.
What are we marking?
I'm 6 o'clock.
Oh, no, God. Help us, Jesus. Why does this happen at the end? Oh.
I think going to Las Vegas is going to be a rather strange feeling for him because he's going to feel them.
Open the door!
Day 3, Las Vegas, 12 o'clock noon. We should have left for Hollywood at 9, but Thompson has locked himself in his hotel room. When he finally lets us in, his face is covered in white makeup.
Are you sure you're going to be okay?
I don't know.
Hey, you look terrible. Hey, sit down, something, and anything, but just
I'm
leave.
on the phone.
Oh, yeah?
Oh.
You might, you're actually well enough to do that. Well, that's good.
Yes.
Can you,
I've been vomiting blood this morning. What? Oh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You can speak to Ralph for a second here. Yeah. Tell Sandy just exactly what's been happening.
Just, well, playing around, but it's obviously not. He's just...
I don't recognize anyone anymore.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
But I was in no mood or condition to spend another week in Las Vegas. Not now. I had pushed my luck about as far as it was going to carry me in this town. All the way out to the edge. And now the weasels were closing in. I could smell the ugly brutes. Yes, it was definitely time to leave. My margin had shrunk to nothing.
Shit, it's just disappearing. Caught back there. Cops behind us anywhere?
No.
The guy behind me is looking at me in a very ugly way. I'm gonna hit the son of a bitch about 4 times in a row.
Flying the coop into the heart of gonzo journalism. Buckle up and lock the doors. Hunter Thompson is on the loose again, shooting down cultural fads, religious leaders, and politicians in the frenetic, slap-you-in-the-face style he calls gonzo journalism. There's nothing subtle about Thompson's writing or life. He uses a carving knife where a swizzle stick would suffice. He's confrontational, offensive, excessive, humorous, and perhaps a touch dangerous.
All right, let's roll. I was a heinous criminal, a juvenile delinquent as a teenager. I think I slipped off the track early on somehow. And rather than maintain it, I had to learn to live with it. I can back off and watch myself sometimes and think, uh-oh, what's he going to do next?
It's here under the stuffed boar at the Woody Creek Tavern outside Aspen. The author of the new book, A Generation of Swine, holds court. At 4 in the afternoon, Thompson has just started his day with breakfast and what should be a paralyzing combination of 2 Bloody Marys, 3 beers, 3 shots of Irish Bailey's cream, and 2 water glasses of scotch. It's hard to believe the man once considered the voice for a generation of youth can still speak.
It requires an immense responsibility on my part.
I would think so. This is not easy, what you do.
No, thank you.
For one thing, I tend to favor drugs that increase the intensity of any experience. I've never been really a fan of crass or any kind of downers. I might have tried heroin once or twice. That interests me at all. I like anything that intensifies the experience, and sometimes you can go a bit too far. Then you get real terror.
Yes.
We have a question up on the balcony. Yes, I was wondering if you could tell us
Balcony's
about...
big, man. Where they stand up or something. Right? I can't.
Could you tell us about your latest bout with venereal disease?
No. Fortunately, I can answer that with a clear and Christian heart and bright white eyes. I have not been troubled by venereal disease recently, and so I can't tell you about it. But I warn you against the filthy herpes. No, my real herpes syndrome that gets on people.
My real question is, could you give me your feelings about disco?
Well, you're a smart son of a bitch.
Casey and the Sun...
I feel the same way about disco as I do about herpes. All right, what do you got next?
Over here.
No, it's your turn again. I want to see you walk on that one.
I'm up here on the balcony and I can't hear shit.
Never mind, man. Let's go down here. All right.
I have a question. You keep mentioning cocaine.
Wait, who's
over here?
We call this. All right, you're next. Yes.
You keep mentioning cocaine, but I read an article you had where you kind of call it a watered-down drug for the masses.
Oh, that's a treacherous and useless drug.
What did you say again? Because
I'm serious.
No, do you remember what you said? Something about going to a party and
just because you read something in a magazine that claims I said it has no goddamn relation in the world to what I might have said.
No, But do you remember what you said in that article? I don't even remember.
Well, at first you hadn't mentioned the magazine, or wait, when?
I can't.
1952 interview in Collier's.
No, well,
what the hell? What are you talking about?
I'll tell you what you said.
Well,
what they said.
Why don't you get your facts down? We'll talk about whatever interview you want to talk about.
Well, listen. What they said, you said was.
What? Who is they, man? What magazine?
Never mind.
Thanks, please.
But you really must. I mean, we can't talk about an interview that I don't even know what you're talking about.
No, it's just that you had an opinion about cocaine, that you'd like to go to a party with cocaine users and give them methadone, acid, and saltpeter, I believe it was.
Well, since you don't recall where you read that,
I can't. All right.
Why should I even? There's no point in my even thinking about whether I might have said it. Maybe I did, but it was. I say a lot of things.
All right, here's his daily routine. 3 p.m., rise. 3:05, Chivas Regal with morning papers. Smokes Dunhills. 3:45, cocaine. 3:50, another glass of Chivas, another Dunhill. 4:05 p.m., by the way, first cup of coffee and a Dunhill. 4:15, cocaine. 4:16, orange juice and another Dunhill. 4:30, cocaine. 4:54, cocaine. 5:05, cocaine. 5:11, coffee, Dunhills. 5:30, get more ice in the Chivas. Cocaine at 5:45. 6 o'clock, smoking grass to take the edge off the day. 7 p.m.
The day, 3 hours into it.
3 hours in, lit. 7:05, Woody Creek Tavern for lunch. Heineken, 2 margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine. And for the rest of the ride home, a snow cone, a glass of shredded ice, which is poured over 4 jiggers of Chivas. Okay, so the snow cone is Chivas. Okay, 9 p.m. Start snorting cocaine seriously, it says. 10 p.m. drops acid. 11 p.m. Chartreuse, I don't know what that is. Cocaine and grass. 11:30, cocaine, etc., etc. 12, midnight. Hunter S. Thompson is ready to write.
Wow.
That's when he sits down to write. 12:05 to 6 a.m. He writes chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6 a.m. in the hot tub with champagne, Dove bars, fettuccine Alfredo. 8 a.m. Halcyon, which is a sleeping pill. 8:20, sleep.
The bike rider is Cliff Workman, treasurer of the Hells Angels, the wildest bunch of outlaws to come out of the West since Billy the Kid and the Dub. He's here to challenge his biographer, a tense young literary journalist named Hunter Thompson. It was Thompson who lived, drank, and rode with the Hells Angels and wrote about them in a bestseller. He was the first to compare them to the outlaws of the West. The critics have been unanimous in their praise of his book, but the Hells Angels haven't been heard from yet. Tonight, Sunday makes author meet critic. It brings together the writer Hunter Thompson and the reader he antagonized the most. That's the bike rider, Hell's Angel, Cliff Workman.
What did you think of the book?
Well, I'll tell you, Al and Hunter, everybody in this room, that book is 60% cheap trash.
Cliff, what is a typical Hell's Angel?
Typical Hell's Angel could be anybody in this room, somebody that likes to ride a motorcycle. I got my own home, I got a job, I got a boat and trailer, you know, I do all things. I raise dogs, I do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, let's face it, you're not a typical angel, and I know that, and you know that, so let's not get ourselves on that spot.
Why, they're no different.
Do you think the angel sent Cliff here as an emissary, as a minister plenipotentiary with a high college degree and a yearning for bourgeois respectability? Is he different?
Those are all your words. You can explain them.
Well, you said he's not typical.
No.
You see, actually, there are none of us that care what anybody thinks. Because we are us. I am me. What I do in my home is nobody's business. I don't give a damn. If they don't like me on my motorcycle, it's too bad.
And you say you read the book and you think that I wasn't saying that? No, I know exactly what I said. I spent 2 years in the damn book.
Well, I'd like to then get to the end of it then on why.
Well, let's take a point of the fact you're wrong there, right?
You spent a year with us, why you got your head thumped on.
All right, get to it.
All right, I want to know why we didn't get the 2 kegs of beer that you promised us. Well, this guy here, he's sitting here, he's making $1 million, and he made it off of us. Maybe not quite that much.
No.
But
if you knew what I was making on this,
you're making something anyway.
You wouldn't tell me that vitamin credit.
We helped you make it, right?
Yeah.
You said
whatever
all we
making,
wanted,
you
there was nothing about money, nothing about a share in the book, nothing about anything. All we wanted was a couple kegs of beer so we could all get drunk. And a copy of the book to each of the Oakland members.
Yeah, I said that.
When you got your head thumped on, you wrote a letter to Ralph, and you said, "See, and I got beat up and got my head thumped on. I don't owe you guys nothing."
I didn't figure I did. But now, wait a minute.
No, but you didn't tell the people why you got your head thumped on.
Wait a minute. Which 2 kegs of beer are you talking about? What are these?
2 kegs that you were going to give us for... We've had you in our home. We've fed you. We've given you beer. You didn't pay for nothing when you went those runs.
I don't think you were in
donated
my
out of
house,
your
but a lot of
pocket
angels
once
have
in
been
a
in my house and drank a hell of a lot of beer.
Well, sure.
So I think it's fairly well
And
legal.
they still like you. But they don't like what you're doing.
Why did they thump him?
All right, this man here, you got into a man's personal argument.
That's a not right lie.
No,
I
it
heard
isn't.
that this afternoon, and go ahead and tell it.
All right,
I'll just deny it.
this is my side of what happened.
Okay, you weren't there, so why don't you preface it with that?
This is what happened.
Okay.
And you see if this isn't right. Junkie George was beating his old lady.
Junkie George? Junkie George?
Junkie George.
If you say so.
Now, this is what happened. I'm serious. Junkie George was beating his old lady.
I remember
Junkie George's dog. Now listen to this. Junkie George's dog bit him, right?
I
To
didn't
me,
see
this
that.
is a personal this is
I
a
didn't
personal
see it,
feud.
but-
If a guy wants to beat his wife and his dog bites him, that's between the three of them, right?
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All right. Here came the peacemaker, right? He doesn't have a patch on. He isn't in the club, you know. And Junkie George is stiff. You walked right up to him and you said, "Only a punk beats his wife and dog." These were your words. Now, you said it. You said it to this man, and you backed up.
You finished
And he
it
said,
all.
"Hunter, you want some of this?" And you said no. But you got it anyways. And when he hit you, 3 or 4 others of them hit you too.
Well,
You got in your
more
car
than
and you left. That's when in your book you said you found Magoo asleep in the back of your car, so you stopped and he got out. But
Yeah.
the next day, if you'd have had any guts after living with all of these people, you'd have come back up there, had a beer, and sat down with everybody and said, "All right, I made a mistake," or "Somebody made a mistake, so what, let's have a drink." And we never seen you since.
Well, why don't you
We
finish?
never seen our 2
All right.
kegs of beer, and we've never seen our book.
You're finished. Are you finished? I was talking to Fripp. It was about 3 in the morning, and we were talking about whether my BSA 650 would run with his chopper. And we were kind of comparing, you know, the ratios and top speeds and roads. And I was watching, what's his name, Junkie George? I don't know who, I didn't know the guy. But there was somebody about 30 feet to my left beating his wife to a pulp on the rocks. And I thought, well, that's, you know, kind of ugly, but that's the way the game's played in
Now,
this
if he'd
league.
been beating her that bad, somebody would have stopped her.
Oh, no, don't.
Member of the
You're
club
kidding
or
me,
something.
and you're going to kid everybody else. No, nobody stopped him, and you know he beat his wife up. You just said it, right?
He was beating his wife.
Okay,
but I mean,
beat
he
his
wasn't
wife
had her
up.
on the ground with a big rock or something, you know.
No. She was lying on the rocks, and
You know,
he was giving her this, you know.
To keep a woman in line, you got to beat him like a rug once in a while, you know.
I agree. When he was doing this.
That don't mean
He was doing it. You know.
And his dog evidently thought it was wrong because his dog bit him. Right?
Well, I wouldn't pay that much attention because I've been
So
around.
he kicked his dog, you know.
Wait a minute now. Let me just get to it.
If it had been me and I was going to say something, I'd have said, "Go ahead and beat your old lady, but don't kick your dog anymore."
You said that.
I'm sorry, Hunter, we're finished.
Otherwise, I can't
Well, you can-
get my own version of it.
I'm afraid you'll have to do it privately.
All right,
Thank
all
you
right,
both
all right.
very much for coming.
Companionship and group loyalty and power. They get together and they can frighten people who might ordinarily frighten them. And especially now, they get, well, since the California Attorney General did an official report on them, they got a massive amount of attention and publicity, national publicity. They made the cover of the Saturday Evening Post, movies, you know, this book. And there'd be no other way for these people to do this without going out and, you know, doing something like the Boston Strangler or the Mad Bomber. You know, it's an easy way to get what they can't get in the square world. It's a whole subculture of dropouts and washouts and people who just can't make it in this automated, you know, technological society. They vary from the big ones, the runs, to just almost a continuing round of beer parties here and there. But on a run, they might get 150 bikes, to anywhere up to 300, in some, say, a state park somewhere, and they park them in a big ring around a massive bonfire, 10 or 15 feet tall. And they buy about, $100 worth of beer, say, just as a starter, sort of in the afternoon. And they'll drink hundreds of dollars worth of beer in a matter of 2 or 3 days. They've actually cleaned out the whole town's beer supplies. At the same time, they're taking, amphetamine pills, you know, to...
LSD?
Well, that comes a little later. They start off with pills, you know, barbiturates and amphetamines, mixing them all together, then beer, then the wine starts. Then later on there'll be some LSD, and everything gets mixed in all together. And this goes, they try not to sleep. And they get wilder and wilder, and they don't recognize each other, and people begin to scream and whip on trees with chains, and it turns into sort of just a bedlam, you know. Well, I remember one reporter from the Los Angeles Times showed up at one of them, and he showed up at noon after when most people were wasted and still sort of asleep. He said it looked like Dante's Inferno.
Okay. Mr. Thompson, what does your book attempt?
And I'm going to try to link them to the other people like the Hells Angels, who don't wear the colors. Like I say, there are thousands of losers and thugs and muggers and petty criminals who would
like to have this kind of attention, but don't.
Well, to summarize, how would you explain a Hell's Angel?
Oh, he'd be between 20 and 40, more likely around late 20s. He'd be a high school dropout. I'm talking about a very typical one. A high school dropout. He'd have a minor police record with a lot of arrests and few convictions on anything serious. Maybe a year or so in jail at different times for small things. He'd be a motorcycle freak, you know, and sort of a lifetime sort of bike rider. And that would get him into the Hells. That would make him eligible. After that, he becomes a sort of a creature of the club. And he gets more and more bizarre, and his police record will start piling up because he's much more obvious.
Do you have to have a police record to be eligible for the club,
No,
so to
but
speak?
if you're eligible for the club, it's assumed that you have a police record. Nobody really cares. I think there was only one angel that had never been arrested when he got in, and he was arrested almost at once, immediately after he got in. I've forgotten what for.
What would you say that the organization does for what you describe as a loser in society? You spent at least a year knowing them and living with them. What were your most vivid impressions of them?
Vivid impressions? Well, visually, there's nothing, no sight that I can think of that compares to these Labor Day runs where they got several hundred bikes out on the road.
What is a run exactly?
Oh, a run is just a sort of a giant picnic or outing. They gather in one spot in the city and then go to some sort of vacation, you know, in the mountains or beach or somewhere all together for a great big 3 or 4 day party. And that's when they really frighten people, because they're all together and they dress in the wildest way they can, and they're all drunk out of their minds, you know, and eating pills. And it's like an army of Huns that moved into your town. They don't necessarily go to destroy the place, but they work themselves into such a frenzy, and there's so many of them. And of course the town, you know, the townspeople are all worried and frightened, and they're carrying weapons and locking up their doors locked, and their daughters in the basement, that sort of thing. So it creates a very tense situation. The slightest thing can blow into a riot or an attack, and the police can't really handle 200 or 300 of them running wild and without a lot of reinforcements.
Sometimes in your book you almost get the impression you're saying that their notoriety is overstated.
Yeah, that links up with what I said about explaining them. The Hells Angels themselves aren't as dangerous, or they're not nearly as much of a menace as they seem to be. But if you just drop it at that and go on to, you know, say, well, they're not so dangerous, ignore them, then you miss the whole point that I was getting at in the book about the Hells Angels just being thousands of other losers just by some other name. Resentment, and this resentment builds up. And, well, I'm much more aware of it now after, you know, this sort of thing. I see Hells Angels everywhere. They don't all wear colors. New York is full of them, I'm sure, or Chicago.
Are these kind of people hopeless? I mean, after observing them for a year, and you say they can't make it in this automated society, is it a hopeless cause?
Well, they're hopeless as long as they decide to stay Hells Angels. I mean, hopeless in the sense that you're talking about. They're not hopeless to themselves. But as long as they insist on being that obvious, would you hire somebody with a gold earring and a shoulder-length hair and stinking of all manner of grease and slime with a police record 2 feet long? They're not really eligible for good jobs. Now, if they decided to quit this, you know, and shave.
Do many ever decide to quit?
You know, I'm not sure what the percentage would be. There are 3 ways to stop being a Hells Angel. One is to die, and a lot of them do that. Others to go to prison, and a lot do that. And the other is to quit. I guess it'd be about, well, more quit than go to prison, and more go to prison than die. But those are the 3 exits that they can make.
Is it difficult to quit? Are there any reprisals from the group if you do?
Depends on why you quit. Sometimes there are, but And it depends on when you quit. It gets harder and harder as you get older because you've built up more of a police record and your friends become more of an in-group, an outlaw thing. I remember one of them saying that he'd like to quit, but he didn't have friends anywhere else. He didn't know how.
What usually motivates a man to just quit?
Well, it depends on how intelligent he is, but say if he joins at 21 or something, and if he has sense, and quite a few of them have enough sense to sort of understand their situation. And they don't understand how to, how to handle it. But those who have a sense of options begin to realize that as they approach 30, they're losing all their options. It gets harder to get a job, it gets harder to find new friends, harder to do almost everything. So once past 30, they're sort of confirmed. Then it's either jail or a bad crash on a bike or getting shot by somebody. The younger ones quit fairly often.
When was the organization Hell's Angels actually originated, and how was it originated?
It started in 1950 in a town called Fontana, near San Bernardino, which is near Los Angeles. And motorcycles were a big thing after the war. California was full of people who'd come back from the Pacific War, and they were all sort of the same age, and they all had money, and motorcycles just sort of caught on. And there were all kinds of motorcycle clubs started, enough so that in 1947, either 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 descended on a town called Hollister near San Francisco. And that was the first really big, what they call a motorcycle riot. And the movie The Wild One was based on that.
Yeah, how much influence did that have on the Hells Angels?
Oh, a lot. Because it gave them an image of themselves. They identified with Brando instead of Lee Marvin, who was really a much more valid picture of what the outlaws were. But say that if there were 4,000 in Hollister, perhaps 200 or 300 were really outlaws. The others were the same kind of people who are riding motorcycles around now, sort of what they call respectable types. And they're always worried that the Hells Angels are going to blacken their image, which they do. A lot of people just don't like motorcycles, period, because of the Hells Angels. It makes it hard to ride on the highways when people are trying to run over you and throw beer cans at you. I've had that happen.
What's the relationship between the motorcycle and the personality of the Hells Angels? Do you think there is one? The reason why it appeals so much to them?
Well, obviously, yeah. It's like carrying a massive gun or a bazooka around the streets. It gives them a tremendous sense of power and freedom, and it makes them very obvious. You can't ignore a Hells Angel on one of his, they call it chopped hogs, booming up and down the street. The thing rattles windows and frightens pedestrians and that sort of thing. So without a motorcycle, he'd be just another punk. But well, it's what I called an equalizer.
You pointed out one time in the book that sometimes they get an almost perverse pleasure in being exceedingly nice to crash their image.
Yeah, when they go into a situation where people are obviously frightened of them, they already have the attention that they're looking for anyway, so it isn't necessary to tear up a place, because then it makes it sort of unpleasant to get, if you get arrested and somebody might get cut. So as long as they get the attention that they're really looking for, then they enjoy it. They enjoy setting up this tense situation and seeing people, sort of like this, and yes, sir, you want some more coffee, that sort of business. But then that doesn't always hold true. They'll take advantage of these things a lot.
You talked earlier about common sense, and you said some of them really do have common sense.
You want to hold that question for the next time?
We're out, huh? Wait, can we cut it a sec? You spoke about the intelligence of the Hells Angels, and you said some of them had real common sense. Would you say that you found any geniuses among them?
No, unless they were so disguised that I didn't recognize it. You do find people who are brighter than, much brighter than average. Very, very few of those, but some. But at the same time that they might be brighter than average, they might be, one of the brightest of the San Francisco Angels can't read, for instance. They didn't go to school beyond the 3rd grade. But you find some who have a very articulate kind of instinct for what's happening, but they have a hard time saying it. But most of them are not very smart. And actually, I won't go into that. They're just not very smart. Nothing compared to the night before. He came with police at noon. People take off their clothes and rush around, and girls are dragged around, and people start up motorcycles and do wheel stands around the fire. You've got to watch, where you walk, where you stand. You're likely to be run over or attacked or set on fire, almost anything.
Do they ever try to explain what they get out of an experience like this?
No, they don't bother to explain it. It's either self-evident or doesn't matter.
Is there any conclusion at all to be reached?
About the Hells Angels? Only that it represents a sort of growing menace that might or might not be called Hells Angels. These people are breeding all over the country, and the more complicated the job apparatus, the more qualified you have to be to get a job, the more people are going to be, forced out off the job market. And there are motorcycle clubs starting everywhere and existing everywhere, for that matter. But all these people don't ride motorcycles, and they don't all wear jackets saying Hells Angels, but they're around, and there are more and more of them. You can draw your own conclusions from about what's going to happen when when we get to a certain level. I'm not sure what the level would be.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's meet our next team of challengers. What is your name, please?
My name is Hunter Thompson. My name is Hunter Thompson.
My name's Hunter Thompson. Follow along with your copies of this one, if you will, please, panel. I, Hunter Thompson, am a writer. Recently, I spent over a year living in close contact with a notorious California motorcycle gang called the Hells Angels. I found the Hells Angels to be an elite organization of outlaws and hoodlums whose philosophy is violence. They dress in filthy leather or denim jackets with their insignia on the back, a winged skull wearing a motorcycle helmet. Although I never actually became a member, for over a year I drank with the Hells Angels, talked with their leaders, and recorded their involvement with dope. I watched them terrorize and intimidate communities as they roared through the streets on stripped-down motorcycles called chopped hogs. My time spent with this gang came to an abrupt and violent close after an argument with a group of Hells Angels. They knocked me down and stomped me. I ended up in the hospital, but I had this story, which is the basis of my new book, called simply Hells Angels. Signed, Hunter Thompson. Panel, these three gentlemen all claim to be Hunter Thompson. Let's start the cross-examination with Peggy Cass. Peggy?
Thank you. Gee, when I saw you up there, I thought they looked like Hells Angels. Number one, are they involved with LSD, the Hells Angels?
Very definitely, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And number three, were you with the Hells Angels in Los Angeles?
No,
Where?
San Francisco.
Thank you. Good. Number two, who is the author that sort of leads the kind of the LSD sect out there in San Francisco?
Ken Kesey.
Thank you. Number three, do you know him?
Ken Kesey, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Number one, are the Hells Angels kind of a club?
Yes, ma'am.
Two, do they pay dues? Number two?
Yes, they do.
Well, number three, we had them in New Hampshire. Did you ever hear about that?
The Hells Angels weren't in New Hampshire.
That's what we thought they were. Boy, they went down with bicycle chains. They were terrific.
Barry Nelson. Number two, approximately how many members do the Hells Angels have?
It varies anywhere from, I'd say, 100 to 200.
Well, where do they get their income?
Oh, some of them work. Some of them are petty thieves. Some of them are...
Number one, why do you think that they are so difficult to deal with? What is the underlying factor, have they found?
Well, basically, they feel that they're not wanted by the rest of the world. They're outcasts. They have a chip on their shoulder.
Number three, what's the best way of dealing with the problem?
With the Hells Angels?
Yes.
Dealing with them?
Why, there aren't so many of them. Why is it so difficult?
Well, it's hard to say.
Don't they break a lot of laws? Why, aren't they enforced?
Not really. The only really laws that they break are, speeding infractions more than anything else.
How do young people feel? All right. Kitty Carlisle.
Number 3, you said you came from San Francisco. What is the Haight-Ashbury district?
That's basically the beatnik section.
Number 2, who is Gut in the Hells Angels?
He's sort of a drifter, a floater.
Thank you. Number 1, what is Kesey's group called?
They're scavengers. They use various names to keep themselves outside the law, really.
Number 3, there's a big piece in the Trib last Sunday about a fellow who was with this group a long time. Do you know his name?
Which group?
The Hells Angels.
With the group?
Yeah.
Yes, it was myself.
Number 2, the Merry Pranksters gave a party for the Hells Angels. Were you there? That lasted 2 days?
Yes.
Where did it take place?
Tom Poston.
House.
Did you hear about the musician who was on LSD? He decided to throw himself on the ground and missed. I have to thank Leonard Lyons for that. Number 2, what is iron? What does a motorcyclist refer to as iron?
What is iron?
No, what is iron? What does a motorcyclist call iron?
Iron is a nickname for a motorcycle. It's a term.
Oh, I thought it was like, isn't it, number 1, don't motorcyclists call cars iron, automobiles iron?
Motorcyclists refer to iron as their motorcycle. That's their machine. That's their machine.
Okay, number 3, do those cats have a lot of broken legs and broken thighs and broken knees and things?
There are a few broken bones, yes.
Number 2, would you say that they're brave fellas, daredevilish and so forth, or are they just kind of bullies and toughs?
I'll let you answer that quickly.
Yeah, they're brave fellows.
That's all we have time for. It's time for you now to mark your ballots. So mark them immediately without change, without any consultation whatsoever. Vote now, please, panel, for number 1, number 2, or number 3. All right, Tom, for whom did you vote?
I voted for number 2, Bud. I thought he was a nice, likable fella. And if I were a Hell's Angel, I'd rather beat him up than either of the other 2 guys.
I don't want to say anything mean about the Hells Angels. They may come and get me with their bicycle chains. But I voted for number 2 because even though he was mean to them at the beginning, at the end he said that they were brave fellas trying to get back on their good side.
Barry Nelson.
Well, anybody who undertakes the kind of thing he did, to study them and so forth, would have a lot to worry about. Number 2 looks worried.
Kitty.
I, too, voted for number 2. I voted for him because he knew Kesey, and number 1 didn't know that Kesey's group was called the Merry Pranksters. And I read all about this in Tom Wolfe's piece in the Tribune, so I know all about the whole thing.
Well, there we are. We'll find out now which one of these 3 gentlemen in truth is Hunter Thompson. Will the real Hunter Thompson please stand up? Thank you very much, sir. And much success with your book.
Thank you.
Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Glenn Jacobson. I manage a new rock and roll singing duo called The Models.
And number 3, what is your real name and what do you do, sir?
My name is Peter Hawk, and I'm a stuntman for television and motion pictures.
Thank you. In checking the score, we find that the panel was a little too bright on this one. That means there were no incorrect votes, but in that case, there still is $150 coming your way, along with our sincere thanks for being with us. Good night, and God bless you. We'll be back with our next team and play another game in a minute, but now, listen to this.